This week, the federal court decided to overturn the government's single-use plastic ban, deeming it unconstitutional. Now, on one hand, it's disappointment for some environmentalists and climate change activists. On the other, provinces like Alberta and Saskatchewan see it as a success in protecting thousands of jobs and billions of dollars worth of investment in plastic manufacturing. Now, questions are being raised about whether things like bags, straws, and takeout containers listed under that ban could make a comeback. For more on this recent development and where that leaves Canadians today, environmental professor Miriam Diamond joins us. Welcome to Global News, Miriam.
Thank you very much, Jaden.
This overturn, how much of an impact is that going to have on the environment? Was this single-use plastic ban making a difference in Canada?
Well, let's distinguish two things. First of all, the overturn of the court decision, we don't yet know what the implications will be. The ban that's coming through on single-use plastics has already received royal assent. It's in place, and it is a graduated three-part bill so that progressively different items will be restricted. It's unclear whether the court decision will overturn that because that's already a regulation. But what it does do is that it ties up the courts, it uses taxpayers' money to fight this, and it emboldens the industry to further challenge environmental restrictions. You mentioned at the offset that it's almost pitting environmental activists against the chemical industry, the plastics industry. I'm an environmental scientist. I'm not an activist, I'm a scientist. The science tells me that we cannot keep producing and consuming plastics. That's the science. It's not just a matter of activism. As I speak to you today, every one of us, you, myself, every one of us has plastics in us. The plastics come in our drinking water, in our food. Every fish in the Great Lakes has plastics. This is a result of the unsustainable production of plastics, and it's just impossible to manage that many plastics. The federal government, in my opinion, wisely focused on reducing single-use plastics in the beverage and food industry. And why? Because they are very difficult, if not impossible, to recycle right now. They're just very limited recycling. And secondly, they constitute a very large fraction of plastic waste. So hopefully this court ruling will not result in an overturning of those regulations.
So what happens now? I mean, we know Environment Minister Steven Guilbeault says he's strongly considering an appeal to overturn this. But if the feds are unsuccessful in their appeal, what does the future in general of single-use plastics look like in Canada? Some major grocers say they won't be bringing back bags, but as you've mentioned, this goes far beyond that.
Well, the writing's on the wall that we cannot continue to use single-use plastics because they are not recyclable, and because so much of those single-use plastics end up as litter, which break down into smaller particles that eventually end up in us. So the writing's on the wall. We have to stop using so many plastics. We have to find better alternatives. The court ruling does not prevent the government from restricting single-use plastics and other plastics. The government will have to find other instruments, but it will be more difficult and more cumbersome.
And we'll continue to follow it. We'll have to leave it there. Professor Miriam Diamond joining us today. Thank you so much for this.
You're welcome.